funds should support new core projects, and we will use the relevant concepts of the capital market to analyze this news. Finally, our teams will put forward our own views and opinions. As you can see, our teams have 3 members, Qin, Wang, and Xu. Next, we'll introduce and analyze this news from different aspects. Okay, as you can see, this presentation will be divided into 5 parts, which are a summary of the news and explain the behavior of Australian government in this news through the basic definition of superfunds. The concept of superfunds division analyze the importance of the 2 superfunds to the government, and we will use the concept of fund merger to explain these situations and give the news-related views and suggestions at the end. Well, first, let's take a look at this news. Australian government says superannuation funds should support new core projects, comes from a report by Reuters on April 6, 2021. Melbourne Resource Minister Keith Pitt stated that Australia, as the world's largest coal exporter, has provided Australia with more than 60,000 jobs in the coal industries and occupies large positions in the national economy. According to the research of professional institutions, the recent expansion plan for new mines in New South Wales is expected to have a total annual output of more than 155 million tons, which will require financial support from the superfunds. However, because Australia has not fulfilled the Paris Climate Agreement to achieve zero carbon emission by 2050, the Australian Natural Conservation Funds has put pressure on 2 big funds, QSuper and SunSuper, asking them to put funds on the energy transition policies and by 2030 completely abandon the investment in thermal coal. The energy transition in New South Wales is currently facing the attention of all parties. Okay, for this news, we will use the relevant concept of the capital market to analyze. First, what is the superfunds? Pensions are the savings accumulated by individuals for retirement to provide income for people after retire. Well, superfunds are organized and managed by special organizations and the funds set up by enterprise to provide fixed living expense to retirees. Large superfund organizations will participate in the trading activities of a stock exchange or capital market. There are currently about 500 superfunds in the operation in Australia, with total pension assets of almost 3 trillion. As for why the Australian government calls the superfunds to support new core projects in this news, we can start with the status of the Australian superfunds. Australian superfunds assets account for about 80% of total value of funds under management. In the long run, Australian superfunds will become one of the countries with the highest growth rate of superfund assets in the world. This will mean that the proportion of Australian pension assets to GDP will increase and will become one of the important sources of funds for the Australian investment market. As the superfunds has a huge asset pool and occupies an important positions in the investment field, this is one of the reasons why the government needs it to support the new mine expansion plans. Okay, now the next member will introduce the concepts related to the specific classifications of superfunds and explain the news.
Thank you for Yinjun and Baiqi. Next, I'll introduce and analyze the 2 superfunds, QSuper and SunSuper, divided in the news according to classification of superannuation funds. Superfunds can be divided into 4 categories according to their funding source, namely corporate, industry, and public sector superannuation funds, compulsory superannuation funds, retail superannuation funds, and self-managed superannuation funds. Specifically, the company super fund can be used for the retirement of employees of a particular company, and in some cases can be provided to former employees or even relative of current employees. Excellent corporate super funds will help attract employees, and some large corporate super funds have lower fees than individuals. However, because the company super fund is only suitable for company employees, it isn't the first choice for employees who do not plan to stay in a company for a long time. The industry super fund is a non-profit fund that will return profit to its members, and its fees range from low to medium. According to surveys, non-profit funds generally perform better than retail funds on average. Public sector super funds are used for government employees and usually have a moderate rate of investment operation. Low fees and profits are returned to members rather than shareholders, and their operation is like industry super funds. Compulsory retirement funds allows recurrent employees to contribute a certain amount of funds to employees' personal account. The retail super fund is usually managed by bank, investment companies, and other financial institutions, which retain a portion of the profit and pay them to the company's shareholders. Finally, there is a self-managed super fund. It's different from ordinary super funds. All members are trustees and have the right to make a daily decision on the operation and the investment method of the fund in accordance with the law. It is supervised by a ATO and can be difficult to supervise in API as an employee in the fund. After understanding the basic concept about classification of super funds, let's look at the two super funds involved in the news, QSuper and SenSuper. Both super funds are non-profit funds that return profit to members, but QSuper is public sector superannuation funds, and SenSuper is industry superannuation funds. This is also one of the reasons why the Australian government chose these two super funds, not only because of their largest assets, but also because of their nature as public sector and industry super funds. QSuper is one of the Australia's oldest super funds, created for employees of federal and state government departments, and it's heavily influenced by the government. SenSuper is a cross-industry super fund for all groups of workers, which also means that as a member of many co-industry workers, the relationship between the super fund and the Australian co-industry is also closely related. Next, Jill will introduce the related content of the fund merger and finally summarize the views of their team. Thank you for your listening.
Thank you, GROUP21. Well, let's now take a look at the related content of Q Super and Sun Super merger. Merger is an agreement to merge two existing companies into a new company. Usually, the merger is to expand the scope of business or gain more market share. The merger of Q Super and Sun Super is mainly due to regulatory pressure to promote the integration of the industry. After the merger, the two will become Australia's largest single manager of retirement savings. The combination of two will manage a total of 200 billion Australian dollars in retirement pensions for 2 million Australians, accounting for 1/6 of the Australian workforce. The huge asset scale is the reason why the Australian government requires these two fund companies to support the coal industry. The two fund companies declined to comment on this news, which is also due to the pressure of the ACF and the impact of global warming issues, and both funds are already members of the Climate Action's 100+ group of investors. Most banks, pensions companies, and other financial institutions withdrew their investment in the resource sector. Changes in investment policies have made the prospect of coal-intensive industry even more confusing under the impact of COVID-19. Our group believes that it's somewhat difficult for the Australian government to require superannuation funds to support new coal projects. First, the new coal mine proposal in the Hunter Valley of New South Wales has received greater option. The research report of the investigative agency shows that it's not necessary to mine new coal mines under the circumstances of declining global coal demand. This is also the majority one of the reasons why financial companies and fund management companies refuse to continue investing in the coal industry. Moreover, due to Asian giants' commitment to achieve net zero carbon emissions, this will hit the coal export industry that has been hit by COVID-19, which has also caused some regions to face problems of energy industry transformation and will also cause fund companies to adjust their investment strategy. In addition, although Australia's pension capital pool is relatively large due to the impact of COVID-19, the economic recessions, rising employment, lower pension contributions, lower long-term super fund income expectations, and decline in population growth and other factors need to be considered comprehensively. Super funds were previously affected to government's request to allow Australians to receive pensions in advance will also cause them to adjust their investment strategy and investment portfolios. Okay, this is a relevant summary and analysis of our group on the news that the Australian government requires superannuation funds to fund the new media industry. Thank you. And this is the reference of our group. Thank you.